Now if you've seen the Viper V4 Pro everywhere this month, you're probably wondering the same thing everyone is. Is this actually worth $159 or is it just the V3 Pro with a new number on the box? And the answer here matters because you could easily waste $159 on something your current mouse already does. So in this video I'm gonna test this mouse against the Superstrike, against the V3 Pro and against clones that cost a third of the price. And by the end of this video you'll walk away knowing exactly what to buy. But before any comparison matters, you need to understand what Razer actually changed inside this thing and what they didn't. We have a new sensor which goes up to 15,000 dpi now. They also added something called frame sync, which from what I understand makes the sensor and the chip inside the mouse sync up better before sending data to the PC. Basically you have less wasted data, less delay, and it helps a lot with battery life, which brings me to the one upgrade that actually matters day to day. Now battery went from 95 hours on the V3 Pro to 180 on this. I charged it day one, after 3 or 4 days it was still sitting like 60%, and I ran this at 1000 Hz on desktop and 4000 Hz in games. Scroll wheel is new too, optical instead of mechanical, smoother, quieter, should last longer. The new dongle shows you battery, DPI and polling rate through LED without opening any software, which is kinda cool I guess. Next you have switches which are Gen 4 and they are super loud. These are hollow, metallic, way louder than the V3 Pro and definitely not what you want to hear for $159 to be honest. But how much of a problem that actually is depends entirely on what you compare it to. And what the mouse feels like after a week on your pad matters way more than any spec on the box. So let's talk about how it actually feels. Now first thing out of the box, my first impression, it feels floaty. I tested this on different pads, cloth pads, glass pads, different textures, same thing on all of them. Now you get used to it after like a few hours, so it's not really something that would make you not want to buy this. Now the shape is identical to the V3 Pro. If someone subbed them out on my desk without telling me, I'm not sure I could pick the right one to be honest. Now this locks in my hand well for gaming, better than Logitech as a shape for me personally, but that's a preference, not a V4 thing. And if you use like a palm grip and you need that hump in the back, this is not for you, just get like a dead adder. Now where do I notice the Razer pulling ahead is on glass pads. With a lot of newer mice, so even like clones, you have problems with some particular surfaces, especially glass. With this one, I didn't saw any problems. One thing to flag though, some people are reporting lift-off distance feels too high even on the low setting. Now if you play low sense and lift your mouse a lot, that could be a real problem. Now it might of course get fixed in a firmware, but right now it's there. We also have this Synapse web which Razer is pushing really hard, the idea that you don't need software anymore, but you still need Synapse the first time to update the firmware before web config even works with this mouse. So yeah, keep that in mind. Now the clicks, I've been holding off on this because it only really makes sense next to competition. And at $180, the Superstrike is doing something with its switches that makes the Razer whole approach look like outdated. Now Logitech hits let you set actuation point wherever you want. You get haptic feedback, you can make the clicks feel however you like, quiet for browsing, snappy for gaming, whatever. On the V4 Pro, you get loud clicks and that's all. Now of course more option is always better than one bland choice, and this is where Logitech is generally ahead on innovation. Now for daily use outside of gaming, the Superstrike is just better to live with, and if Razer put that kind of click tag on this mouse, it would be my main easily. Which is why I think this release is more of a test than a final product. As someone who did marketing for 10 years, it feels like Razer dropped it just to see how the community reacts before committing to something bigger. Now I bet some money that within a year they announce like a V4 Pro SE or whatever they want to name it, with some sort of adjustable switches built in, similar to Logitech. Now bottom line on this matchup, best raw specs and battery, V4 Pro wins like easily. Best daily click experience, Superstrike by a lot. Either way, shapes comes first. If the Viper fits your hand, you're not buying a Logitech regardless, and the other way around to be honest. But here is what neither brand wants you thinking about. What you can get for a third of this price, because in 2026 the real competition is sitting at $40 to $60 and is getting uncomfortably close. So here is what else your money could get you right now. The moment the V4 Pro launched, the V3 Pro dropped around $120. Now if you wanna go lower, the ATK X1 Pro is around $50. Basically it's just like a Viper shaped clone, where independent latency tests have it keeping up with mice at 2 or 3 times its price. Build of course is not like Razer, but for what it costs is hard to argue against. Now the Amcho's L7 Ultra Plus is about like $56 with an 8K dongle in the box. Yeah, of course it's a different shape, but worth knowing about if you're like fingertip or like a small hand player. And then there is the VXC R1 Pro at around $35, which is probably the most talked about budget mouse in the community right now. It's like 54 grams, solid sensor, and nobody who's tested it can find like a meaningful gap against mice 4 times the price. Now if you want something in between where you're not rolling the dice on AliExpress but also not paying flagship prices, Pulsar is king in my opinion. So you've got everything from $35 to $159 on the table, and what actually separates them is not what you'd expect. Now Pro use the Viper because at tournament you need zero surprises. On-site support, replacement units, firmware tested for months. That matters only when your like career is on the line. But for everyone else playing like ranked at home, that doesn't really matter that much, to be honest. Now, something worth saying about this launch specifically, nobody can tell you about durability on a mouse that's been out for weeks, and Razer had real issues with switches and scroll wheels on older Vipers. So take every launch week review with a grain of salt, of course including mine. Now, of course, at the end of the day, what separates all of these mice is perceived performance. How it feels in your hand, on your pad, in your game. Not what the sensor does in a test lab, and at that level the gap between $50 and $159 has never been smaller. So now we have three answers. Now, if you're on a V3 Pro or Superstrike right now and you're happy, just don't get this. Nothing here changes how you play, and if I'm right about Razer dropping an updated version with better switches, you'll be glad you waited. If not, it is what it is, I'll get you a beer and it's fine. But if you're like on something older, V2 Pro, older Logitech, anything from a couple generations ago, the V3 Pro at $120 is the best move right now, to be honest. Now, if you don't really care about brands and stuff like that, VXE R1 Pro at $35, ATK X1 Pro at $50 for the Viper shape, or Pulsar for something more polished. So pick the shape that fits you, spend the rest on a better pad or better audio or whatever you want, I don't really care. And to be honest, at this point, you see a bunch of people comparing bullshit online, but the only thing that matters is how it really feels in your hand. There are people hitting Radeon with like a Microsoft Intelli 1.1 mouse from years ago, so at the end of the day, get what fits your hand at the price that you can afford, and you should be fine, to be honest. Now drop your current mouse in the comments. I'm curious what everyone's using and whether you're upgrading or staying put. And if you want to learn, see more about gaming peripherals, or like my first impression on the latest Logitech mouse, check out this next video.